Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this special online video interview. My name is Pamela Welling. I'm the founder of the North Grenville Writers Circle. Today, I'm absolutely delighted to sit down with Leah Lindeman to discuss her latest book, Unborn Melody. Leah is a self-described feisty Latina, history buff, and Canadian patriot. She is the author of the Canadian Reminiscence series, which transports readers through time to Canada's past, filled with romance, intrigue, and heart. Leah's writing spans the genres of historical fiction, romance, and suspense. Beyond her own published works, Leah Lindeman is a dedicated fiction writing coach and a talented book trailer creator. She is also the visionary founder of the Eastern Ontario Writers Festival and Book Fair. When she's not preoccupied with writing, reading, and raising 7 kids with her husband, you'll find Leah daydreaming about the Scottish Highlands, and that's not necessarily to get away from the 8 people, right? Just kidding. Welcome, Leah.
Thank you.
That's a lot
I
of
love
kids.
I love that last little bit.
What's the
Sometimes.
what are the age ranges of the kids?
So my oldest daughter, she's turning 14 May 1st, and then my
Okay.
youngest daughter is 20 months old. Yeah, so I have
Oh,
14, 12, 10, 7, 5, 4, and 20 months.
wow. Do they get along
Yeah.
okay, or is it
They do. I
oh,
mean, there have been moments. I would say probably the worst was with my 14-year-old and my now 10-year-old. And just when they were younger, that was, the grind time. They have very different personalities. So it took a while for them to finally, I guess, start to understand each other and know when to give each other space and know how to communicate how they want things done or how they can work together instead of just catfighting. So it took a little bit of time, but now they're in a much better place.
I think that makes sense when you've got so much like a little bit of an age difference, and the younger
Yeah.
ones sometimes want to do what the older ones, but they're not there yet. But wait till
Yeah.
the
And what doesn't
sorry?
what doesn't help too is when they have same friends and
Oh, yeah.
like they both want to play with the friend or the friend wants just alone time with that one and then alone time with this one. So that also creates a little bit of trouble too. But
They'll look back when
it's
they're adults and be happy. They've got a life.
exactly.
So
Yeah,
before we dive into Unborn Melody, can you tell us a little bit
sure.
more about the Eastern Ontario Writers Festival and Book Fair?
Yes, I'd love to. So it all just started with this idea. I was at book club, not book club, sorry, writers group in at the Alexandria Library. And we were all just talking and, joining in on writing and our challenges and our triumphs. And then I thought, well, why don't we just take this but to a bigger scale? And that's how the idea was born. So the Eastern Ontario Writers Festival in the morning from 9 to noon, we have like a little bit of an icebreaker. So everyone, gets to meet each other, see each other. And then we have 2 hour workshops. So 1 hour, you get to choose among 3 different speakers. One will be, we're hoping to have one French, one English, and one bilingual to cover all the language logistics. And the second hour will be the same thing. Again, French, English, or bilingual. And it will be about different subjects. So, we got some great applications already. One person was using nature to inspire you to write. Someone has pitched us the idea about editing. How do you deal with editors? What is the editing process of a book? Another one has talked about light versus dark and the morally gray in between and how you find that a lot in fiction and how to write that very well. So there's so many different great applications we're looking through right now. So we're excited to, finally pick our final 6 and present that to the public. So that's for writers specifically, writers workshops in the morning. And then from 1 to 5 is the book fair. And that's where we'll have author vendors come in and they can set up a table and they can sell their books. And again, we'll be wanting to cover French and English as well. And I can't say quite yet where the location is. It's like 99% yes. So we're just waiting for that final 1%, hashing out those details. But I'm very excited to finally announce where that's going to be. But it's going to be in Castleman, and that's September 13th. It's a Saturday. And again, it's a whole day thing from 9 to 5. But some authors may not be able to come speak, but they'll be vendors, and some author speakers will be there for speaking, but not selling their books. So we're going to try to accommodate as much as we can. And yeah, the second half of the day is for readers, like just to come and they can get a book in their own language and find different genres that they'll enjoy because we're going to have a wide variety of genres.
So Canadian authors, I mean, that's something that's
Yes.
going to be growing interest, I think, with what's going on in, around the world right now. So that's
Yeah,
great.
for sure.
Is
So
there a date for potential vendors to contact you?
yes. Yeah. So right now we just have applications open for speakers. It was May 1st originally. That was a cutoff date, but because we're adding in that French language component now, we're just trying to cover all those bases. We've extended it to May 16th. So that's the cutoff date. And we have the French and English applications going on right now. And we're going to try to open up the vendor applications beginning of May. So in about a week or two. And we'll have those available in French and English. So just stay tuned on our Instagram, EO Writers Festival, our Facebook, same thing, Eastern Ontario Writers Festival, and we'll be putting out a graphic really soon for the French speaker applications, which are live. We just need to push that out now. We've already sent a few invites, and then the vendor ones will be coming out very shortly. So we're excited to
Oh,
open that up to everyone. And that will be an application process as well, because again, we want to make sure we cover both English and French and we get a whole variety of genres. So it's not all going to be romance or all going to be fantasy. We want that mix because there's so many different readers out there who like a different mix of genres, right?
that is exciting. I look forward to that.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um,
yeah, for sure.
would you mind sharing a book synopsis for Unborn Melody?
Yeah, sure. So I'll read the back here. And the tagline is One foolish choice, her future is stolen. World War II, 1943. The United States, with Canada's cooperation, begins a secret construction of highway and an oil pipeline in the Northern Territories that will fuel defense against a possible Japanese invasion. Just note, this is after Pearl Harbor. Men and women answer the call of the wild, more so the stronger call of abundant money. Eleanor Mackenzie arrives in the North, ready to stake her independence. One choice delivers a disastrous consequence that gravely alters the future she had envisioned for herself. Then comes a man who offers her a solution to keep her job, to keep her independence, but she must walk the road she would never have chosen. Will she keep her guard up and fight for her independence and freedom, or lay down her arms for unconditional love?
Exciting. Like
Mhm.
I started reading it you know, last week and
Okay.
thinking, oh, Canadian, Canadian, Canadian. It's nice to have um, books that are Canadian and the connection to real history. I'm gonna ask a
hmm
question for you coming up
Oh,
on
yes, for sure.
um
I love history. As you said, I'm a history buff. So,
yeah,
and I don't purport to say I'm perfect, that I've written these perfectly, but I do my best, to make sure that that history is crystal clear. And yeah,
very exciting. So I just want to read a review. Yeah,
sure.
it's penned by Alyssa Del Palm. She's a writer and director of Wild Roots Nature and Forest School and the author of Summer at Pine Lake. Alyssa writes, I love how much research went into this historical novel. Leah's vivid descriptions of old tools, homes, and daily life during World War II made the era feel incredibly real. The way the story is written truly transports you back to the 1940s. I loved her nature descriptions most. The slow burn romance between Seath and Eleanor was beautiful. Every moment of their growing connection felt meaningful. So that's a nice
It's glowing praise. Yes, I'm
yeah.
very happy with it.
So it's part of your Canadian Reminiscence series. Before we explore it, can you tell us about the other novels in the series?
Yeah, sure. So my first book came out in 2016, and that is Redeemed from the Ashes. Now, the reason why I even went down this self-publishing road in the first place was because the 100th anniversary for the Halifax explosion was in 2017, because this happened in 1917. And I was really toying between, should I traditional publish, should I self-publish? But in the end, I decided to self-publish because it gave me the time I needed to put this out and to go on tour in Halifax for this. So I was able to do that because of the decision I made. So this is about Evelyn Richardson. Her husband comes back from World War I, maimed, and then the Halifax explosion happens. Now, for those who don't know anything about the explosion, it completely destroyed the city of Halifax. 9,000 people were injured, around 2,000 people died. And so her husband goes missing because of this explosion. And her journey to how do I build my life back up when everything has been ripped away from me? So that's her journey. Comes back 11 years later with Ghost of My Heart. And you see, well, I really can't say much about this, but 11 years later, she encounters a stranger, and that leads to second chances. And then she has to grapple with a personal revelation that changes her life and the lives of those she loves the most forever. So that's this one. And then, so I write them kind of in pairs, as you can see.
Nice.
And then I have Wisps of Gold. Now, this one's a completely different one. This is about Rose. She's a feisty, rebellious 17-year-old, just finished finishing school, and she comes across murder and intrigue during the 1871 Caribou Gold Rush. She's an heiress of her father's money and wealth and this hidden gold vein, which she is blackmailed into finding. So that's that one. And book 2 of Wisps of Gold is Scathed Bones. And this one is her encounter with Canada's legendary serial killer, Agnes McPhee, which Agnes McPhee was known to kill 50 miners for their gold and stash the gold in the area. And she originates from Scotland. So those are the other books in the series.
Wow, interesting. I love the
Yeah,
fact that they're linked to real events.
exactly.
Would you mind doing a reading from Unborn Melody?
Yeah, yeah. So I always try to, when I'm asked to do readings, I always try to pick a different reading section to read from. So I've never read from this section. So this is a little newbie here. Okay. Eleanor was sitting on Julia's bed when her friend returned from shift. A hard mask shuttered Eleanor's features, her white knuckles unclenched, but she was still biting her lip. Eleanor couldn't find the words to speak. Ellie, Julia threw her hands into the air. You running off not only left me with my boss's share of the work, but also Mr. Brooks's. At least he didn't give me his whole pile of papers to type, but still. She calmed momentarily. I know you're dealing with a lot. Believe me, I'm not totally unfeeling. You just. She strode a couple steps closer. You've got to do your job. I don't have a job anymore. Did Mr. Brooks explicitly say you were fired? He knows. You work until he says you're on a plane ride home. Do you know why I came north? Why, Ellie? It was finally a way to live my life, a way to make my own decisions without anyone else needing to have their say. It was a perfect opportunity to be independent of my parents' expectations while providing them with more money. Julia added, this war sure has paved the way for us to work out of the home. Yes, I'm just not sure if our freedom is a reality or an illusion. Now I'm at the mercy of what I ran from. Eleanor rubbed the tops of her knuckles with her fingers over and over. Julia stilled her harsh movement. Eleanor said, I'm not keeping it. Julia kneeled in front of Eleanor and held her face between her hands. Their eyes met. Eleanor hoped there would be no judgment in the eyes of her only ally. I'm here for you, whatever your decision. Julia dropped her hands. How? Do you know what to do? Hot tears ran down Eleanor's cheeks. I don't know anything about it. And if I tell anyone, I'm gone. If I get caught, 2 years in prison. How will I be able to help my parents have a life? Julia grabbed Eleanor's hands. Let me see what I can find out. Until then, go back to Mr. Brooks's office and do your work. I can't take more of your pile. She flicked Eleanor's nose and rose. I want to change for the gathering tonight. Put something pretty on. You're young and beautiful, and we'll have a grand old time.
Yay. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the events, like we said before, of your books are rooted in historical reality. And in this case, there's general concern about potential Japanese attacks on petroleum facilities along the West Coast during
Yeah.
World War II in real time. In fact, the US government did undertake an urgent construction program to complete a pipeline from Norman Wells, Northwest Territories, to Whitehorse, Yukon Territory during the winter of 1943-44. What inspired you to choose this specific historical period for your novel?
So I came across this because my father-in-law is a huge World War II enthusiast.
Mm.
He used to have a giant library full of World War II books across all the different facets of life. And he gave me one called The 6 Years' War to read. He thought I would enjoy it, which I did. And in this book, now this is like an old, bound book. It's basically stories, personal stories of different facets of World War II life. So you have stories on the home front, stories from the Navy, from the Air Force, accidental deaths that happened, and the tiny little section in the back of the book was on the building of this pipeline. So most of the sections in the book had at least 10 to 20 stories. This one only had five. And so that just really piqued my interest because here I am thinking, not many people know about this. Now, if you read the stories themselves, you'll see that not many people knew about it when it was actually being constructed. It was a very hush hush project, very quickly accelerated, for that quick, imminent, perhaps possible invasion. So anything that not many people know about piques my interest. And it's kind of like that hidden gem that, if you just dig it up a little bit, it's so interesting and people can enjoy it. So that's how it piqued my interest. And then I started doing the whole research about it. And then once I was researching it more and more, I realized, no, this is what it is. Like I just know. I don't know. I come across a story and I just know that's it.
Right on, yeah. So
Yeah.
do you tend to pick the time period before you pick the character?
So
Like
I
an
picked, yeah,
idea.
so I picked the event,
Yeah.
right? The event, which obviously correlates with time period. And then, yes, the characters come to play. So originally, I was playing around with the idea of the main character, Eleanor, would be like in the mail service, but it just wasn't sticking and I wasn't feeling inspired to write. And then I came across a fictionalized book called The Mackenzie Breakup. It's funny, it was Mackenzie, but I did not copy the last name. The reason why it's called Eleanor Mackenzie in this book actually is because one of my readers, I did this little raffle from my first book, and I said, if you win, you get to pick the character's name. And so she picked Eleanor Mackenzie based on her grandmother. So I had this name 2 books ago, and I was just waiting for a book to like, okay, this is going to be it. And
Yeah.
turns out this was the book that it worked really well for. So yeah, so she picked the main character's name. But yes, I read the fictionalized book called The Mackenzie Breakup, and it was a fictionalized account of her being a typist and going up north and kind of describing other jobs that women had up there. And I just realized, like, oh, okay, like there were jobs specifically for women and they were really well paid compared to, Edmonton or other cities in Canada. So I just knew, okay, that's the trajectory that I'm going with. So yeah.
That makes sense. See, and I thought it was the Mackenzie River.
Now, well,
Oh, yeah.
and then there is the Mackenzie River. So I think the reason why it's called Mackenzie Breakup is based on the Mackenzie
Mackenzie
River
River.
because the river plays a part. In the book, her husband, not her husband, her original boyfriend, he's what do you call it now? He's a geologist. So he's on the river a lot. They're, surveying and doing all that. And then she breaks up with him. That's why it's called the Mackenzie Breakup.
Gotcha.
But it
Gotcha.
was very, very instrumental in historic like in research because she lived it. Like she actually, the author went up north. So I actually did reach out. I wasn't too sure if she would still be alive, but I reached out and I said, like, would it be possible to talk with her? And they said she had passed a few years ago. So her name was Jean Cadman. That's the lady who wrote that.
Oh, that's interesting. That's just
Yeah.
goes to show you, that people, the historical, what they leave behind in uh,
Yeah.
in the times is so important and and so interesting, I guess.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
for sure. It's so important to take the time to read what the older generation has left behind, their
Mhm.
thoughts and their experiences, because you never know how that's going to inspire you in your art or creativity or your experiences.
Right on, yeah.
Yeah,
Can you share some insights into your research journey and how you made sure that the historical details were accurate?
sure. So, I mean, the quick
You
thing
have
that I
to.
always kind of look at is Wikipedia, but
Yeah.
you cannot use it. You can't use it as a, oh, this is what Wikipedia says. I'm going off of that. No, it's just like to help familiarize yourself with the event, quick details. But I had a few great sources for research. So as I said, I mentioned that book, The Mackenzie Breakup, was really great. Even the American Army actually left behind a video that's public on YouTube, and I found it miraculously. And it was made in 1945, 46. And it was them basically describing and documenting how they built the pipeline. So it was really neat. Like I had logistics on, okay, like how long were these pipes? How heavy they were? How did they move them from Peace River all the way to Norman Wells? So I had basically like a roadmap. It's grainy. It's not, the best uh, resolution, but it gave me so many details that probably would have taken a long time to dig up. So I had that. And I read a few, like books. I always go to books that other authors have written and look at the research that way. And then the archives. The archives are actually a treasure trove of material. And what's great is a lot of, especially for that time period, there's quite a few pictures. So I was able to see, what the buildings look like, the tank farms. I even looked up, I needed a plane for that time period. So like, I don't know anything about planes. What kind of planes did they have? Bush planes. And so there were a few pictures. I even mentioned in my author's note at the end, I think the plane that I did find was like for sure was around a year later. So, there might be a slight discrepancy in time there, but close enough. So yeah, it's and then you take all your research material and then you just, you compare it against each other and make sure everything works well and that they complement each other. And if you see one voice saying something and the rest say something opposite, then it's probably not the right nugget of research to use. And I think it's also important to get research from different perspectives. So, like, obviously, the American documentary that I watched, it's from the American Army perspective. So that's one perspective. And then you read from Gene Cadman's book, and you get like a perspective from someone who worked there. And then, you just kind of look around. And I did learn that, like the black colored soldiers that were in the American Army were the ones that were given most of the grunt work. They had to be the ones that had the hardest jobs up there as they were building the pipeline. So, you learn all these little pieces, and for the time that makes sense that that was the case. And yeah.
Interesting. When you were talking about the thinking your character might be a mailroom person or something, I was
Hmm.
what is it they used to say colored back then, the women,
Yes,
the mail
that's
room.
true.
That's what I was thinking in my head too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
History is so interesting.
Yeah.
How do you develop your characters to reflect the societal norms and cultural expectations of the time period while also making
Mm.
it relatable to modern readers?
Yeah. Well, obviously, the more you go back in history, the more constraints on women that you see. So all of my main characters are women. However, in Unborn Melody, I did do a little bit of a departure from my previous books. I did dual perspectives. So the first section of chapters is based on Eleanor. The second one is based on Seth, and then it goes back between Eleanor and Seth. So that was, one way that I decided I was going to grow as a writer and try something different and new. And it just worked for this story. So, yeah, for the women, I always say nothing is new under the sun. We all have the same desires and the same, you know, desires to be ambitious, to have a purpose, to love, to have a mission. And so that is what these characters have. Like in on all the different books, and all the characters are different, but they're all seeking or finding themselves in the world that they're in. And obviously the world is constantly changing. And so there's constant changes within characters too, and that's how they grow and develop. But yeah, it's you don't have to look too far, and you don't have to make them too different, even though it's historical, because human beings are all the same in that sense. And so that's how I think relevancy really plays a part. I think you just need to know why people tick. I think you need to understand human nature most of all to make that relevant to your readers. But yes, of course, different times have different constraints on, let's say, women characters specifically. So that's where you would kind of need to, to look at the times and see what those constraints are. So I'm just going to take Wisps of Gold, for example. She is a 17-year-old. And back then, women did not have the opportunity to have their own businesses. That just wasn't a thing. If they did, they had real estate or it was prostitution. So I gave her that ability. So her father is murdered and he passes on this mile house where the miners go through and they stop at these different mile houses to get their food and their rest before they move on to the gold fields. And so she inherits this mile house and she's able to run it. But she would have only been able to do that were she an inheritor or she had a giant fortune, right? If she didn't have it, then she wouldn't have been able to do any of that. She would have gone from finishing school to, okay, who am I going to marry and how am I going to survive in this world, right? Because obviously you need money. So that's just one example of like a specific constraint during that time in that particular place. What are the options that women have?
Yeah, and we all sort of have the stereotypical idea, from watching movies and TV. So I
Yeah.
guess the starting place, and then if you have questions, you look it up.
Yes, for sure. Although with Wisps of Gold specifically, because it is like a Wild West, like the Canadian Wild West, but the Canadian Wild West was very different from the American Wild West. So you can use movies as like because movies are usually American Wild West, that's what they
Mm.
feature. So you can use that as an inspiration, but then you really have to go into the nitty-gritty of like, okay, well, we obviously didn't have sheriffs, we had Mounties. And what were the logistics for Mounties? Like it was one man compared to a large area of space that they had to man, and what were judges like. And I have a great real story of a judge in that book. His name was the hangman's judge, Judge Begbie, and he was just very hardcore cracking down on criminals, and he's known for that, and that was his nickname, the hangman's judge. So yeah, it's fun when you find out these details. Like you can really go down a lot of rabbit holes and research. And if you like to learn about things, and then if you're historical, you love to learn about history, or even if let's say you're writing contemporary romance, and one of your characters is in, like for example, I'm just gonna shout out an author. Her name is Kate Cole, and she writes women in trades romance. So the first book, she's a stonemason herself, so she based it as her protagonist is a stonemason. So that she didn't have to do too much. But her second book, she's the main protagonist is a welder, an underground welder. So there's that, right? I have another friend who's an author. She had to look into firefighting, like doing research on that and asking firefighters, like, well, what is your procedures and what are those hoops that you have to go through? So I would say almost every genre, it requires some research. You have to, get out of your bubble, read up, ask people, especially if it's contemporary, you can ask people who are in those jobs, what the ins and outs of those jobs are. So that way, when you're writing it, it's you're
Makes
giving due honor, and accuracy to that person, that protagonist, and to the people that you're representing.
Yeah, I think historical fiction of any kind is interesting, but I like nonfiction history, so I think that's.
Same.
But it always seems like it would be a lot more work than doing because organizing your research and I don't even know how to go to the libraries and archives Canada. Like, do you make an appointment? I don't know. Someday I need to do it just so I can because people ask me the question. I'm like, I don't know, you know.
Yeah, well, if you don't know, the thing is you
I
just
don't.
look it up and just call and ask. Like the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to get a no, right? But
Yeah.
again, for a lot of people, they're not used to going out of their comfort zone and that bubble. There's like, oh, maybe I'll just stay home. Like, no, just go ask someone.
Yeah. Do you
And you
have
never
to
know what you're going to find.
do you have to do you have thick notes of everything that you learn, or do you learn it when you need to and then you write it, or?
Yeah, so what I do is before I start any project, I'll do 4 to 5 months of research, just like research only, just to make sure that I'm familiar with the times and the customs and the language that people are speaking at that time. But I do write notes. I'd say a lot of it is up here. I just seem to be gifted in retaining a lot of information, but I do, like for Unborn Melody, I actually printed a gigantic map of the area because it does cover from Edmonton down south all the way to Norman Wells. So it's a lot of territory to cover. So I did Google Maps and I would like print out sections of the map and then I taped it all together. And then I just, put all my markers on my map. And then on the back of the map, when I was, let's say, watching the American documentary, and I would write down those specifics about like, the piping and like the rivers and where what were the logistics of moving all that equipment. And then so that kind of the map and the back of it were most of my scattered notes. But at some point, it's good to get a lot of notes down, but at some point you do have to stop the research to actually write. Right. So for those who really enjoy the research, they kind of have to tap themselves on the hand and be like, okay, that's it. Stop procrastinating. You have to write now. So
That
that's
makes a
why I
lot of
kind of
sense.
yeah, yeah. So that's why I kind of give myself 4 to 5 months because it gives me enough time to read the material and to go down plenty of rabbit trails. But then, like, okay, I know enough. Now let's get to the story because obviously the story is driving most of the book. Oh, I thought I wanted to say something else. I forget. Anyways,
I'll come back. Might be at
yeah, we'll come back.
2 o'clock in the morning, but maybe during the interview, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Was there anything interesting or like a surprising fact that you learned while you were doing the research for Unborn Melody?
Yeah, so I mentioned one already that the colored people were given most of the brunt work. So that's, well, surprising, not so much, but just I just didn't think of it,
Right.
right? Because obviously, modern day today, that's not how we treat people, but
Mm.
that's the way they were. But one fact that I'm so glad I read the Mackenzie breakup is because in most of my research, I never heard about the Dene First Nations. And
Mm.
in that book, I did. She does talk about them. And basically, they were a huge catalyst in giving the American Army surveyors, workers on the pipeline, and that is their territory. And I just didn't see that in a lot of the research. But then when I read the Mackenzie breakup, she mentioned them, and I was like, oh, okay. And then I started doing more research specifically for the Dene Nation and who they are and what their jobs were like during the pipeline. And I was blown away by how involved they were. But of course, it makes sense too,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, so that was fun, and I actually featured them quite heavily in the book because, well, Seth, his adopted family is the Dene people. They took him on when he was younger, and that kind of comes out in his backstory. But there's strong ties there, and I just wanted to make sure that they were honored and that it was very obvious that those people were invested and, you know, put a lot into that project too.
That's good. Not that I'm judging you, but I think it's really important, you know?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
Well, I made tea myself, but the
oh,
thing is, like, I don't even. It's kind of sad. I just don't know much about my First Nations history because a lot of that was with my grandfather, and he passed away 4 years ago. So I'm slowly, whenever I have time, trying to like figure out. Okay, I know it was his mother that was Métis, so I would love to know more about that, but that's going to require time as well. But yeah, so for me, it was important that that was highlighted.
yeah. I think I learned more in when I was living in Winnipeg.
Mm.
I mean, I got the history from like somewhere in elementary school. I think it was before high school. I could be wrong. But in Winnipeg, I really, really learned Louis Riel
Yes.
and how different he was treated to like it blew my mind actually. I'm reading it
Mm,
and pre-internet, even learning about I remember getting an A+ for John A. Macdonald, and I'm looking back now and going, I wouldn't write the same thing now, because
yeah.
no more. And sometimes it's interesting and sometimes it's heartbreaking, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, speaking of Louis Riel, that not him specifically, but that time period will be Okay, I'm going to go into, oh,
Oh,
okay,
sure.
I'm going to preface that by I'm currently working on the sequel to this one.
Okay.
I've already released the cover, the title, so it's entitled His Girl, and it happens 5 years after this. And it's more of a family drama. What happens, or how do you respond when, there's a knock at the door and it changes your life forever? That's kind of what it's looking at. And so it's a novella. It's under 40K words, but that's just to clinch up Eleanor's story there and more of the characters that you'll come to read in that book. So I'm currently working on that. That's going to be releasing later this fall. I don't have a specific date yet, but I'm working on it. I'm finishing up developmental edits as we speak, and then I'm going to start sending that out to beta readers and keep going on that direction. So, but after His Girl, I'm going to be writing. So the next book is featuring Saskatchewan. I think I forgot to mention this, but each book or each main book features a different Canadian province in a different historical time period. As you gathered, Redeemed is Nova Scotia, 1917. Wisps is 1871 BC. This one is World War II Northwest Territory. So the next one is Saskatchewan. And I'm going to be highlighting the Northwest Rebellion of 1885, I believe it is. And I know Louis Riel was involved with that, or he was the leader of the Métis.
Yeah.
So that one's going to be also a very different genre. So Redeemed is more like drama romance. Wisps of Gold has some romance, but it's very murder mystery driven. And Unborn Melody is more historical romance. This is going to be more of like two cultures clashing, and what does that look like? Especially back then, right? Because you have the Métis and the settlers. And I'm not going to speak with too much authority right now because I haven't done like the proper research. But
Mhm.
yeah, I'm just feeling the story tugging already in a sense of two cultures coming together, the heartbreak that comes with that, and what was that like? So I think it would be more of a, I don't want to say political drama, more of a cultural drama.
Yeah.
You still might have the intrigue and a little bit of romance, but it's not going to take center stage. It's going to be more about, um, yeah, the coming together of two people and how that happened.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
sounds great coming up. And then
Yeah.
you said you're going to get all 10 provinces and all three territories, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I've
Yeah.
done three, but
Yeah.
I've got a
Yep.
whole other 10 to go. It's going to be like 20 years before I'm done. But you know what? That's how much I love my country. And that's how much I love its history because growing up, everyone's like, oh, Canada's so boring. Canadian history, we're such a young country. There's nothing. And I just kind of always knew that there was more to it than people were saying. And now I'm just like, I'm going to prove you all wrong. I'm not doing it for that, right? I'm doing it because I sincerely love it. But no, we do have an interesting history, and there are real people who lived real lives and or similar to these characters' lives, and we can learn from that. So, but I also do it for the entertainment factor as well. And then again, I just love these stories, and I just write because that's where the stories and the characters lead me.
That's terrific. It's kind of like if you don't have a plan, how do you know where you're driving? And you've got,
Yeah,
you know what your plan is. You're linking events to a province or a territory in history, and
yeah,
then putting a romance on. I think that's a terrific. I like that
yeah.
concept. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't know what's coming after Saskatchewan. Obviously, we'll have its own little sequel novella as well. I think the next one, because it's pulling me so hard, is St. John's in Newfoundland,
Hmm.
like Newfoundland Labrador area. I don't know why that whole thing is just calling to me, so I don't know what that is going to be, but
Maybe when they became a province. Okay, I'm just throwing
maybe.
it out.
Because even there, it's actually a very old territory too, right? Like the
Yeah,
Vikings, that's where they landed. So there's a whole potential for, I just don't
yeah,
know. I don't
yeah.
know what it is, but I know that it's asking to be next after Saskatchewan. Let's just say that.
It's good. You let the idea percolate, and
Yeah,
eventually it'll tell you either the characters will jump up or yeah.
yeah. That's
Okay.
right. Well, I tell my readers, I'm like, so if you know any interesting historical tidbits from, your place in Canada, please let me know because I'm constantly looking for the spark, right? And that's what like I got this from a book. It just so happened, and who knows where the other spark will be. And Saskatchewan, I can't even remember where that spark came from. I just know it has to be that story. That
Right on.
yeah.
So do you write like research or write every day? And how long does it take you to do a first draft, if you don't mind sharing?
Okay, so research, as I said, was like 4 to 5 months. That's the main research bit. But if I come across something that I'm like, oh, okay, I can quickly research this, then I'll quickly research it. If I realize it needs a bit more research, I'll put a little star where I want to, that research needs to be highlighted, and then I'll go back to it later. But I write every day. Yeah. Even if it's 10 minutes. Most of the time, I can get in half an hour to an hour. Usually right now it's in the evenings, occasionally in the afternoons, but that really just depends with kids and what's going on with that. So, and I'm just thankful right now I can actually write in the evenings because there was a good chunk of time in my life where I was just completely brain dead at night. So I couldn't write at night. I would have to find or make time in the afternoon to write. So yeah, right now we're doing that. And I have a little texting message group with two friends. They're also writers. And one of them is like, you know what? I heard that you could just even go with one sentence a day. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. If that's all you can get out, one sentence a day, it's literally one sentence closer to your finished product, right? And so for her, she's been sometimes it's one sentence a day, but sometimes it turns into 200 words, 500 words. You just need to start and you just don't know where it's going to go, and then you may have actual time to do more than one sentence a day. So, yeah, I'm a big proponent of every day. If you can't swing every day, every second day, because not many people know this, but your body is on a 72-hour remembrance time clock. So whatever you ate, however you slept, whatever your habits were, it affects your body 72 hours in advance. So that's why I say every second day, because you're still in that rhythm that your body can remember. But I wouldn't go past that.
Keep the habit, keep the momentum,
Yeah.
keep the routine.
Yeah,
That makes
exactly.
sense. Can you talk a little bit about Alexis Livingston, the graphic designer for your book cover?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So we were actually really close friends in elementary school. That's how I know her. And, then high school, I didn't go to her school. I was actually homeschooled, so we just didn't see each other that much. But then as adults, I just remember she was getting into photography. And so I knew that I wanted her to be the one to do my first book, and she did. And then we just have kept it up. So she actually lives, like around the Barrie, Ontario region. So she's far from where I am, which is Eastern Ontario, Cornwall, Lancaster area. So whenever she comes to Montreal to visit family, like we just kind of time it that way. But for Unborn Melody, she wasn't coming out my way, but we were going out her way. We were going to Niagara Falls with the kids, like a whole family trip. And I was like, hey, so do you think you could find someone that kind of looks the way the way I want this to? And then I'll come to you. I'll drive, further north and we'll meet up and we'll do the shoot. And that's where we did it. And she's excellent. She gets what you're trying, the vision that you have. She gets it. She understands it. It's such a fun process. I choose to do like real people on cover, so that just makes it even more fun. And she's just great to collaborate with. She's always so on time, very professional, and she knows her stuff. Like yeah, she's great. So I don't want to go with anybody else because, well, she's my photographer for
Who's your
my
person
covers.
for that? Yeah.
She's my person. So if anybody is looking for that, definitely go with Alexis.
Right on. So I did put
Hmm.
her name in our little the circles where I've got information of people, so she's there. Can you share
Perfect.
information about the services that you offer as an author, coach, book editor, and book trailer?
Yeah, sure. So I do writing coaching, and I started that officially last year, a year and a half ago. Just as I've come into my own as an author, I see a lot of young writers struggling and not knowing what to do. So, yeah, that's just my desire to help them grow as a writer and to take their idea, whatever it is, and to see it come to life, right? Like to actually have that idea and have it as a book in their hands because it's something really magical when that happens. So I like to focus on creating the proper mindset as an author and then using different writing techniques to bring that project to life. So I do offer that. Right now, I'm pretty much capped, so I'm not really taking on one-to-one clients right now, but I'm really hoping this year to actually release a course. So that way, people have access to that on their own time. And that way it's not, I'm more available to a whole lot more people than just one-on-one. And then for book editing, I mean, I could do it. I don't really dabble in that too much. I am a good editor, but I've got enough to do on my plate with that. So not
Mhm.
so much a book editor, but definitely book trailers. I did my first book trailer for my first book, and I could tell that I was maybe had a natural eye for it. But then a few years ago, I took a video course of like how to do video either on your phone or a DSLR camera. And from there, it really gave me all the techniques I needed to make them good. So now I've really been experimenting with my own book trailers, and now they're definitely at a professional level that I like them at. So yeah, so I decided, well, I have so much fun doing my own book trailers. I can do that for other people. So that's what I do. It's on my website. You can see the different kinds of trailers that I have. And I do a variety of genres. So I do historical, contemporary romance, thrillers, nonfiction, fantasy, so most of the genres.
Right on. Actually, I think you're the first person I've met that does book trailers. It's kind of
Oh, really?
because now
Well,
I got you on my list.
yeah, there you go. Well, and I do offer three different kinds. So the basic model, which is, like the model that most people go with is so it's shots that, I cull from the internet and I put them together with music, with sound effects. And then I do have the next model up, which would be live actors, one live actor. And this includes like revisions and working with the author really to take the vision that they have for their book and bringing that to life through a book trailer. So I'm very collaborative that way. And then the second tier, which is the most expensive one, but that would be two live actors. So, if you're writing contemporary romance, this might be more suited for that. But yeah, so that's what I do. And I just love it. I when I did my first book trailer, I just realized how much I love videography. Like of all things, I didn't think it would be. And then I just enjoy it doing it so much. So I thought, oh, this is fun to do it for other people too, right? And just give them a marketing approach that maybe not a lot of people have. So
Yeah, and it's another way to be creative, I guess, eh?
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for speaking with me today. At the time of this interview, for those watching, you can visit Leah's website at leelindeman.com to download a free audiobook of her work, Redeemed from the Ashes, a Halifax explosion romance. You can also
Mhm.
contact her to purchase signed paperbacks of all her books and learn more about her on Goodreads. Once again, thank you, Leah, and goodbye to everybody.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.